George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Paula Johnson is professor of law at the Syracuse University. She's also the co-director of the Cold Case Justice Initiative. Yes. Oh, but no, the director now, right? I said that. Co-founder, but the director of the Cold Case. There we go. Co-founder of the Cold Case Justice Initiative. Big week in the history of the United States. The first African-American woman to be confirmed to the United States Supreme Court, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Professor Johnson, what does this mean to you?
So you're asking me, I think, on a personal level first, and so let me respond that way. George, we talk about, these sorts of things all of the time. And they always have an impact. And I have to say that, for me on a personal level, it's just very momentous. I mean, it just fills me up, to be able to be present in this moment, in history, and to feel the magnitude of the step that has just been taken, a barrier that has just been broken, and by someone who is just embodies, ability, somebody who just, seems so, suited, and prepared for this role. And to think that she would have been denied, for reasons that had nothing to do with her qualifications. And so I am glad to be alive in this moment, to see this happen. This is someone, with whom on, a variety of levels, I just, feel that I can identify with as a Black woman also in this society, as a Black woman who is a professional and in the law. But, even barring all of that, I think it's just so important for us to, witness what has occurred. And so, Judge Jackson, who is now confirmed, and so she will be known now as Justice Jackson. I just think that speaks volumes really to the depths of of my being, and the core of this nation.
So now to the question of what does this mean to the country? Because I know you you ready for that. Yeah. What do you think the significance of this moment right now in the country and where the country is, right? And I guess that would be part one, and then this part two would be, I ask you what is personally for you. What does this mean for Black women, right? So maybe you'll take that one first.
Well, where I ended really was to say, in finding, connection and, the commonality, in seeing, Judge Jackson, in us. And I think that, many Black women see that, she carries, a sense of her own history with us. She doesn't run away from it. She doesn't eschew any of those things. She fully embraces who she is. And, so for example, seeing her parents, who were with her throughout those confirmation hearings, and knowing what it meant, for them to have been the first, Black folks, in her family to have attended college. And, they both went to HBCUs, and, for them to have gone on in their own careers, her father being a lawyer, her mother being a teacher. And just to know that history and to embrace it, and then for, her as the next generation to have gone on, with her aspirations going to college and law school. For her, it was Harvard. And so I think it's an important historical moment for Black women, for Black families, for Black communities, to see ourselves in terms of our, in terms of our strivings, in terms of what we want for ourselves, our children, our communities. We see that possibility in Justice Jackson because, she did persevere as she was, given that encouragement to do by another Black woman. And so we can see our possibilities in what she has achieved in her life. And we can see our reflection in her. She's a Black woman, dark brown complexion, natural, hair. I mean, all of the things that in the variety and the diversity of who we are, we see that she is a proud Black woman, and we can all be, grateful, and we can all be happy. In the words of Senator Booker, we can feel the joy.
Yes.
We
I'm
were
not gonna let you steal my joy, he said,
not
right?
gonna let you steal my joy. And so we should feel that joy. We should take this moment as a joyous moment. Hard won on the backs and shoulders of many people who preceded her and preceded all of us. So I think that the ancestors paved this way, and I think that they are smiling too, because they made this possible. And we are walking that path that they provided for us.
And I know this is superficial, but you made a point of it, but it's not superficial, right? I'm looking at her hair, right? This is that style of hair, right? The way she was. She's gonna be on the Supreme Court with her hair in like little braids. Okay,
locks, yes.
That's locks, right? I mean, that's that's not insignificant. And I know, like, I'm like making a big deal out of it. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I know that's symbolic. I know there's something there.
Yeah. Well, as I say, everybody makes decisions about how they want to, walk in the world, how they want to present themselves in the world. I think for her, it's, it is a statement about how she regards, who she is, where she's from, what her history and herstory is. And so, she embodies that, and she presents herself that way with all of those aspects of her being, and things that some folks would not embrace, and here she is on the highest court, being her, beautiful natural self. And I think that will certainly encourage many others to make whatever decision is right for them in terms of how they present themselves. And so it shows us that we can all be proud of our heritage and the way that we actually wear that heritage. And I think that that's so important too.
As you sit here with locks and cowrie shells. So just for the record, right?
For the record.
For the record. Her confirmation hearing was divisive, but look, so was Kavanaugh, so was all, if you're not the party in power, is very, very divisive. So is there anything we can take away from a nation? Right. I don't know because I basically centered us first. Now, what does this mean for the rest of the country after a pretty divisive hearing, using like some tired tropes and tactics that really just didn't work?
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to work anyway. So why would they even try to do that?
It was not going to work. So here is something that I think is worthy of note. And that is, polling is just, has been going on throughout this whole process.
Right.
Interesting to me was that the, national polls, not just among groups of Black folks, not just among people of color, but national polls of diverse, people across this nation, cross section of this nation, held her in higher esteem than the institution, to which she is about to, to enter. Higher than Congress, higher than a lot of national institutions. People were, finding her favorability rates. I think it was one of the ways it was put, in the upper 50s, like 58% to 60% and so forth. And so what it suggests to me, those numbers, is that people are they're more savvy than we might give them credit for in terms of what they witnessed in the confirmation hearing. I think they saw it for what it was. I think they saw the excesses to which the Republican Party went in the way in which they questioned her and doubted her judgment, her ability, her sensibility, all of those things, that were thrown at her. And she still withstood, the barrage and came out of it with more respect, I think, across the nation than, one, might have thought because of those attempts to derail her nomination. So here's what I think. I think that the country now has an opportunity, if those numbers, are truly reflective of what people were thinking about the process and about her in particular, that we now have an opportunity to reset, so that there isn't another nomination or confirmation process that looks like the one that we just saw. There was absolutely no reason why she should have had to run a gauntlet such as that for someone with the caliber of credentials that she has. And again, George, I'm not talking about having disagreements with people. I'm talking about substance, the substance of the treatment. I'm talking about the manner in which she was treated, entirely disrespectful in some respects, things that we just haven't seen by any other, nominee for that position. You mentioned Justice Kavanaugh, for instance. I went back and looked at some of Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing, and remember there were allegations against him of sexual abuse.
Right.
And, there was nothing like that. There was nothing like that for Justice Jackson, but if you go back and look at those hearings, Justice Kavanaugh, in some ways rebuked the committee that was there to question him. Now, I can't imagine, I think few people can imagine if those roles were reversed, meaning if Justice Jackson had done something, and, spoke in the way that Justice Kavanaugh spoke to those senators on the Judiciary Committee, we would not be talking about her being on the U.S. Supreme Court. We simply wouldn't. Yeah. We would be talking about a woman, who had lost her composure. She was angry. She was, out of place. And so we simply wouldn't be talking about a woman who was, just confirmed to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. But Kavanaugh was confirmed to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court, even though he lectured, and spoke to the other committee members in such a disrespectful way. I thought that his demeanor was quite disrespectful to the process and to the other senators. And so we've got to get to a place in this country now where those kinds of things are regarded, for what they are, and that is differential treatment on the basis of race and gender. And so we can reset, right? If this is a reckoning, then we are able to reset so that these things do not happen again.
Yeah, that sounds like white privilege, what you just described to me, but I guess I get to say that, and that's what
and male
and
male,
male,
because
true,
remember,
right, male. That's just and so
there weren't any women, and they weren't, one of, just two now women of color on
on
this bench.
this bench. I think lastly, while we celebrate Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation, at the same time across this country, and I just ask you to just comment on this, at the very same time, voting restrictions, women's right to choose restrictions, I should say abortion restrictions,
Yes.
Voter suppression, all of this is happening right before anti-LGBTQ
Yes.
legislation, all of so this what do you make of this, right? Celebrating this, and at the same time, our rights are rights for all, and especially those who are at the margins, and women. We're seeing right before our eyes in the greatest country in the world, right? We're seeing these rights taken away right before our eyes, right? Don't say gay, and what's happening is legislatures, I don't know how slick they got, but they're seeing ways to do these things, and they're getting away with it.
Well, I will say this, George, and it's so interesting because, as I was, thinking about, all the momentousness of what has happened, coming to speak with you, I have to say that, twin emotions, really. One was the elation. I mean, this is a great thing, right? It's historical, it's
Right.
all of that. And at the same time, almost in the same breath, what I was thinking was the importance of voting, right? And that is because there was a razor thin margin that permitted her to be voted into this position. Look, in the Judiciary Committee itself,
Right.
they were split down party lines. Now, that can't be justified, that there were no Republicans on the Judiciary Committee that found that they could vote her out of committee and make a recommendation to the full Senate. That just can't, that's unfathomable. There's no justification for it. So they voted down straight party lines. That means 11-11. And so it was a procedural measure that got her out to the full Senate, right? And so now getting to the full Senate, once again, there is no margin for error if you think this woman should be on the U.S. Supreme Court, because it's a 50-50 Senate. And the tiebreaker is Vice President Harris, who had that come down to, just party line. Also, that the only way that would have happened was whether or not Vice President Kamala Harris would have broken the tie to put her on the bench. Now, as it turned out, it didn't happen that way. But listen, there were only 3 Republicans who voted, for her to be confirmed. That is, to me, too close for comfort. And what it signals is that if we don't want to continually face these kind of, like always being on the precipice of whether or not we're going to succeed or fail at public policy or different things that we would like to see happen in our government or in nominations, that means we have got to vote. We cannot be comfortable with things going, by with just, 1 or 2 votes from the other side, because if they don't do that, we lose, right? That nomination is defeated. And so
let me add to what you're saying, and hold that thought. Lindsey Graham told you, if we had control of that Senate and that Judiciary Committee, that nomination wouldn't have gone nowhere. He told you that.
Yes, he did. And the minority leader, Mitch McConnell, um, well, he was one of a few of the Republicans who were, in the chamber as the vote took place. Many of them, left. They weren't even there for this, historical moment, right? And for the country. But he still made comments in, adverse comments about, her nomination and, what he thought of her, record, all of these things that just really belied the way in which she's been regarded across a broad spectrum of people, law enforcement folks, all kind of folks who thought that, she was eminently qualified, and the qualification really isn't even an issue, for her really, but also that she did the job in the right way. She wasn't some outlier. She was pretty much, right there in the main as far as sentencing decisions. They tried to paint her as someone, who coddled, sex offenders and pornographers. I mean, these things are assaults on her character. And so, they could not even, um, be there for this moment in American history. And so that should speak volumes to us about why it's important and understanding, as I like to say, the struggle is long. And so, there will be moments, throughout that time when we are, joyous about, what happens. I mean, we have to celebrate those moments, but we cannot rest. We simply cannot rest. And part of not resting is challenging all of these things that would seek to set us back. And part of that is voting.
Yeah, and I'll end with this. Um, Voting more critical than ever because we have the midterms, right?
That's exactly right.
We're here. We're right here. And if you think about what look at what happened, look, Merrick Garland, perfect example of why
Yeah,
your vote matters at every level. And you look at
that's
these
right.
legislatures, right? In fact, these elections for your local legislatures are probably more important than anything because
Yes.
that's how that's the impact of what we're seeing across this country. And
Yeah.
so let's get out
That,
and vote.
that saying, George, about vote early and often, is, it's not about doing something like fraudulent, like vote,
Right.
more times than you are allowed to do. It is about voting at every election that comes up, local, statewide, federal, all of those votes matter. And so whenever there's an election, um, people need to participate in that.
Period. Said and done. Vote, vote, vote,
Yes,
and vote, and then vote.
that's right. And you know what I like to say too, George? I was just talking about this last weekend at a forum, talk about voting. We have to imbue, young people at the earliest age, right? With the sense that voting is something that should come as natural as breathing to them. And if they don't have the opportunity to do it, then that's another fight that must be waged. But I say to older people, right, adults, take young folks with you when you go to vote. Take them to the precinct when you vote so they can see that that is a natural part of what you do with your citizenship rights, and you demand those rights. If you're voting by absentee ballot or early ballots, let those kids see you fill out that form. Take them to the post office or to the mailbox with you when you drop that in. And when they say, what is that? You explain to them, I am voting right now. Or let them see you, stand next to you on your lap while you are, in that voting booth casting that vote. They need to know that from the earliest time so that voting isn't something abstract and strange and something you only do, every so often. You've got to vote, and people need to know in our communities that voting has to happen at every opportunity. This is why Ketanji Brown Jackson is there, because there were at least 50 Democrats and a tie-breaking vote if that was necessary to put her on the Supreme Court. Anything less, she wouldn't be there. Anything less, she wouldn't have been nominated. This is the significance of that.
Professor Paula Johnson, College of Law at Syracuse University. Professor Johnson, always good to see you. She lets me call her Paula, so y'all, that's why I said that.
Same,
yes,
likewise, George. Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it, and thank you as always. Magnificent
Okay.
inspiration for the nation.